Hello and welcome to my channel, Vibrant Systems. My name is Danielle Hauk, and with Vibrant Systems, community is my business. Connection is my business. And in this session, I'm going to be talking specifically about how we can start to take aligned action based on what we're passionate about in our communities. Now, you might notice I am dressed fairly chaotically today. Normally I dress a lot nicer for my videos, and there's a reason for that. It was because in my home province of Alberta, Canada, we are experiencing people who want to leave Canada, want to separate, and I would not like that. I want to be Canadian. I love being Canadian, and it's not to say Canada is without its issues. It definitely has them. But I was activated to take part in a community demonstration against this separatist petition that's going on this weekend. So this outfit that I'm wearing is brought to you by the banner that I am currently in the process of painting, and I'll post some photos right here so you can see how wonderful my artwork is for that. But one of the reasons why I'm doing that, other than the fact that it aligns very deeply to my own values, is that, sorry, he wanted to attack the camera, is that I realized that if I don't take action on something that I care about, and then I come here today for this webinar to tell you how to take action for what you care about, I'm kind of a hypocrite. Yes, this channel, this content that I create is part of that, but another part of it is that lived experience. I was at, not too long ago, at the Aboriginal Friendship Center in Calgary. I was at an event. It was a storytime event with Elder Rod Scout from Siksika Nation. That actually, I'm really close to Siksika where I live. But in his storytelling, in his presentations, he said, it's not what you do, it's not what you say. It's not what you say others do. It's what you do. And so if you want to know how to do something, if you want to have the prestige or experience that comes with it, you got to join. You got to do it. And it was those words that were in my head when I started reaching out to counselors and community members and schools and everybody in my community, business owners, to let them know that this counter demonstration was happening, that I'm organizing it, and that they can come and show their support if they want to get involved. And I want to share this with you to show you that I'm not just talking about this stuff. I am also doing the work to embody being an active community member and participant. So, with that little blurb out of the way, let's get started with today's webinar, Awakening Your Inner Champion. Honestly, this topic for me came to me because I know how critical and important community champions are for raising awareness of certain issues. I have worked in communities for a decade now. My entire professional career, I was working in communities in some capacity. And one of the first times that I had this opportunity, it was with a really amazing woman and mentor who has started a lot of nonprofits in my hometown. And she was celebrating the fact that the nurse who was spearheading the postpartum depression community group, circle, support group, she was celebrating having this champion in our community to talk about this difficult subject, to bring awareness to it and to give people a safe place so they can still feel like they belong. And that has always stuck with me. The importance of a champion who not only brings awareness to an issue, but also brings awareness to it in a way that invites connection and action. Because to be a champion, I mean, we all care about stuff. We all have our values. We all make choices in our life, right? But to be a champion is really to put action behind what we say we care about. And when we put action there, when we follow through, when we do the work to become the person who can champion a cause, it is such a ripe and rich area of growth on a personal level. And I say this having done this work over this past week for this specific movement that I'm a part of right now, but also even just this same process of growing into and becoming somebody who can thrive in my business. It's a very similar process. But again, it really starts from that values perspective. But to be clear, there are a few things a community champion is not. They are not the only one responsible for these movements. They are not even necessarily the leader. They may play an important role, but they might not be the head or the one that has the money, or, they're not going to necessarily be the mayor or the CEO, but they're going to be the person who has what they care about, and they don't let what they care about fall off the agenda. They're going to be the person who's doing the work over time to figure out how they can continue to support this issue that they care about. So, the first myth around a community champion is being a champion does not necessarily equate to being a leader in a hierarchy. Not the case. One of the things I really loved from Adrienne Marie Brown's Emergent Strategy, I'll post the book there so you can take a look. Highly recommend it. One of the things I really loved about her work in community building that has really helped me stand in my power is understanding that really effective movements are decentralized. They're made up of leaders who are thriving in their specific roles. And as a community champion, it is an opportunity to also find those different roles we can thrive in. Again, beyond leadership as some might think of it. Another myth with community champions is that they have to be super educated about an issue. I think all too often, we stop ourselves from moving, taking action on things we care about because we're like, oh, we're not the most educated in the room, or oh, I don't actually have lived experience in there, or someone else could do it better, right? But the ideas of expertise and knowledge and experience, it's important, it's valid. We should be reaching out to those people. But all too often, nobody is going to bring it to your community, this issue, this passion, this thing you want to move on. They're not going to bring it to your community. You have to do that. And so that championship role isn't even about knowing everything. You can have zero answers, but want to take action towards reducing homelessness in your community, or starting a local community garden, or, hosting block parties. You can want to do these things enough to take action. Seeking answers, seeking expertise, and being willing to learn is part of that action. So the second myth is that you have to have all this expertise. You have to be an expert already. No, you become an expert through the doing. And when you start from a place of ignorance that is humble, when you're willing to admit it, and you're still willing to let your passion push you forward, that in itself is really transformative and alchemical and inspiring. And I'm going to have a lot more respect for someone doing that than someone who, maybe they care about something, but they never actually act on it because they just don't think they're the right person, right? Or someone who has all that knowledge and it's just not their thing, right? Because with a champion, it's that passion, that action is what makes you a champion, not necessarily how much you know up there. let me just see now. I'm casting for a few other potential myths that might be lingering around what a community champion is. I think also the idea, this is kind of actually really attached to the first myth, but this idea for myth 3 that a community champion is doing it all on their own. Not even in a leader sense, but that it's a solitary thing. Because who community champions really are, that champion, that person who's taking on that cause, is they're activators. They're finding the other people in their community who are around them. They're finding the funding. They're learning the gaps that are there in their knowledge or are there in their community. And they're activating people to help them. They're good at communicating why they care about something so much, and they're good at giving people pathways to get involved. But that doesn't mean they're only the only person doing this work. Whether they're getting help from family or friends or local nonprofits or external funders, there are so many different ways for people to get help for what they care about. And I honestly, truly believe that so many people have so much caring deep within them that they've repressed because they haven't had an outlet for it, that a lot of communities are really starved for someone to start taking that first step and start giving that opportunity to get involved. So, big 3 myths. 1, a community champion's always the leader is a myth. 2, a community champion is the expert, also a myth. And 3, a community champion's doing it all alone. And what you'll really notice that these 3 myths have in common is ideas around hierarchy or individualism. Because a community champion inherently, with that community there at the start of that term, they are there to connect around an issue, yes. And maybe it's an issue that they're the only one who cares about at the start, but they're there to connect around it. And when we're seeking connection, when we're seeking community, we have to start learning how to put down our beliefs around hierarchy and rank and who is considered a valuable part of a movement. Because we all have an important part to play. We just have to figure out what is sustainable and unique and relevant to our gifts and capacity. That was good. Good start. Taking a bit of a breath here. I'm kind of in a goofy mood today. It's been a long week. I'm excited about it. I'm happy about it. But it's been a long time since I've been out on the ground in the way that I have been this week. So I'm just taking my time and finding my pacing here, making sure I'm saying the words that feel very aligned with this space, this container that you're joining me in. So, if a community champion is not a leader or an expert or the sole person on this path, then what exactly are they? I already gave you the answer, but I'll give it again. A community champion is the person who activates community and action around a certain issue that they are passionate about. And I think this part is really key, really important, because for someone to be a community champion who is capable of sustaining action over time, they need to know what they care about, why they're pursuing this specific action, and they need to be willing to learn and grow through it, right? It's not something you start and stop. And honestly, as someone who for a long time started things and never followed through, doing that will convince you can't be a champion. I believe every single person, especially every single person watching this video, already has that spark within them. But to build that spark and to nurture it in a way that is relevant and whole and kind to yourself is a different ballgame. Because very, very often, I think we're stuck in this normalization of being dragged along by certain timelines to complete certain tasks by a deadline without that intrinsic internal motivation. And so if you're someone who you do find you care about an issue and you're looking for a way to act on it, what I would invite you to do, the first reflection question that I would invite you to ask yourself is this: what values do I hold around this specific issue? I'll leave this up here for a little bit. Sorry, my cat is distracting me. This is a really important question for anyone, I think, because very often it's easier to point out the things we don't want in our life, in society around us, in our communities. And a lot of times we don't actually have an alternative of what we want to see more of. And when I started doing this values work, just under a year ago now is when I really dove into it for myself. When I started doing this values work, I had no idea what I cared about. Like, I knew the things that sounded good to care about, but I wasn't entirely sure what lit me up inside, what made my heart sing, what gave me the energy to move forward on those days where I was otherwise exhausted. And so when we're focusing on an issue, especially one that requires long-term commitment or requires us to do things we're uncomfortable with, like going into 30 businesses in one day and handing out a flyer and asking them to show up for a political or politically charged demonstration, we need to know why we're doing that. And we need to know why we're doing that beyond the issue itself. For me, in this current example of this anti-separatist demonstration that I'm in the process of organizing, my values as a business owner, as an individual, our connection, our growth, our diversity, our resilience, our learning, our humility, our research. And for me and how I live in alignment with these values, the separatist movement in Alberta is very... I don't agree with them in any capacity. I don't think they're strategies or even what they're saying are well researched. I think they're very misguided and ignorant, and at times it's straight up propaganda. So there, first one, not good. They're creating division, not connection. They're separating, not seeking to understand. Again, huge difference. They're choosing to leave or proposing to leave Canada because they're imagining some sort of alternative that, again, isn't well researched, but they're not seeking growth. They're not seeking hardship. There's also a lack of humility in this movement. There's a lack of understanding. These are the values around what I'm doing. I don't want this to be a political video, but this is a really good example. It's a very lived example in this moment. And you don't have to agree with my perceptions or my stance on this to understand the example that I'm giving. Because again, this desire I have to show up and to celebrate connection and to celebrate community is very much informed by my values. When we know our values, when we know what we want to build, we're also capable of showing up in ways that are authentic to that future and vision that we hold. And again, this, more importantly than why I disagree with the Alberta separatist movement, is why I'm showing up the way I am. I'm showing up with a big banner, yes, but I am also showing up with free food and hot coffee for people who want to join me. I'm showing up with music to be fun, to be playful, and games. I'm showing up with a food bank donation drop-off because I believe this mutual aid and connection to our community is so important. For me, it's not about just showing my disagreement. It's about creating a space where people can connect with their neighbors, can tell stories, and can feel safe and seen and hopeful, even with all the grief and disruption that is existing in the world right now. Because I know so many of us hear anything political and we shut down. And so I'm very intentionally creating a space that it's not political. It's just show up and meet your neighbors and drop some food off for the food bank, and you know what? Stay and listen to some music if you want. Yes, there's a big banner here, but you don't have to think about the banner if you don't really want to, you know? And this is really informing the steps and actions I'm taking for this specific issue. So if you're a champion, if you care about an issue, whether, you know, it is politically charged, whether it's about LGBTQ2S+ rights, whether it's about supporting newcomers to your home, whether they're immigrants or refugees, whether it's protesting ICE in the States, whether it's starting a local food movement or championing a sewing group, it doesn't matter so much what the issue itself is. I mean, that does matter. The clarity and scope of that does matter. But the values around how you're choosing to move forward with it are going to be what guides you into aligned action down the line over time. And when we understand our values, when we can build this clarity around what this aligned vision looks like, it's easier to start taking those small steps that were unclear before, where we didn't know, oh, I really care about food sovereignty, or I really care about helping people reduce the amount of clothes that end up in the landfill by teaching them how to mend them. But I just don't know what the first step is. When you define what the values are around that, you can start having conversations around those values that maybe aren't specific to what you care about, but open the door to telling people about your sewing group. It could be, you know, talking about local food movements or, you know, food sovereignty in your community and be like, you know, I would really love to start a seed bank so that people can garden more on their own, so that we can protect native plants. The values help us connect with people who may not hear the issue that we care about. They may not, you know, resonate with seed bank. They may not resonate with mending clothes. But if you can loop them in with the values of sustainability or resilience or local systems, then you're expanding the network of people who can potentially ally with you on this vision. One of the other reasons, and I'll stop here after, I'll move on from this point. One of the other reasons I really love values as guideposts is they help us discern whether opportunities or partnerships are actually aligned with us. Because you could be offered to join something that sounds really good on paper, but you realize that energetically or on a values foundation level, there isn't that alignment, and you can choose not to. Or you might have an opportunity that on paper sounds not even relevant to what you care about, but you share values. And so this is a way to expand their work as well as your work and connect to people who have those shared values, who are looking for other ways to get involved. If you want to learn more about values, I am hosting a webinar on February 26th, Values as Community Building Road Signs. I don't know. I will link it below. You can register for that anytime. I would love to see you there. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Leave a comment below. What values do you care about? And how are you acting towards embodying those values in your life? All right. Enough about values, as much they are one of my favorite things to talk about, but I will move on. Another really important step for a community champion who knows their issue, they know their values, they know what they're trying to build, is being able to take care of yourself and to connect with your ability to rest, because this allows you to move forward with this issue over time. It allows you to create sustainability and resilience and commitment through the difficulties that you will encounter. Because I'm not going to soften that. We're all going to encounter challenges on our path and moments where we're like, you know what? I could just choose not to do this. I could make a really good excuse and not go. I haven't, committed in this way yet, so nobody would really know if I didn't follow through. You would know. I wouldn't know. And I say this because I am guilty of this, for sure. I almost did it earlier this week before I committed to printing pamphlets and actually going out and telling people what was going on. I definitely had a moment where I was like, I could easily go into that open letter I wrote on Facebook and erase the part where I said I was going to host a demonstration in opposition. I could do that. Nobody would know. People don't read that much. They haven't even read it. I had those thoughts. I did. I was uncomfortable. This is a growth moment for me. This is a comfort zone expansion. And because of that, because I've developed this awareness in myself, and that awareness has taken a lot of grace to develop. Don't expect it to come to you quickly or easily if you're just starting this journey. But because I have taken the time to connect with my breath, because I know what it feels like when I'm holding tension in my body, because I've done the work to understand that my thoughts really are just thoughts, I was able to talk myself down from editing that Facebook post. I was able to release stress and calm my body so I could fall asleep that night instead of tossing and turning and fretting and wondering whether, using my energy in that way. And I could be very kind and compassionate towards myself as I moved through these discomforts of speaking on a radio interview, of going in and talking to business owners who may or may not actually be separatists, who may or may not actually agree with this event. Because for a long time, I would avoid talking about issues and things I valued because I knew people didn't agree with me. And that eventually led to me not talking about it with anyone, even those people who probably did agree with me and probably did want to help me do something. So if you are just starting this journey, I do want to add a big heaping dose of self-compassion and grace. And a reminder that there are so many tools out there for you to learn how to move through this expansion phase in a way that's not beating yourself up, not tossing and turning all night and rotating like a rotisserie chicken in bed, because I have done that. I still do at times. There are tools for that. And one of those tools that I will offer you is I have free guided meditations on this channel for things like developing mental clarity, for things like setting intentions, for things like moving through emotional upheavals. All of these are a part of really building a system and understanding of the wholeness of yourself, so that as you move through these actions, you are supported holistically. And if you're ready to do that work on an even greater level, I'll put the link down below for this as well, but I have my video course, Elements of Self, which looks at the ways we embody change and compassion, looks at how our relationship is to our emotions and whether we're uncomfortable sitting with them because of the discomfort, and how we can actually start to do that work. This is an opportunity. It goes with our thoughts, our limiting beliefs, and how to actually create expansion there. And finally, my favorite module in that video course, how do we connect with our fire in a way that's sustainable, that doesn't burn us out, but that helps us keep going in the things we care about, in the actions we care about, even when we're overwhelmed or we're doubting ourselves or we're exhausted. How do we keep that passion alive so that we can go, rest, and show up again tomorrow? That's all included in my video course, Elements of Self. You can get that. I'll put the link below. I really loved creating that, so I hope you do check it out and see if it's right for you. And if it is, well, that's just wonderful, because I know it transformed my life learning those lessons, and then it transformed it again when I created the course, because I had to go through them all to birth that course itself from this idea into this actual material impact. But as we move towards balance that allows us to sustainably show up for something we care about, as we learn to balance our passion that might include frustration and anger and grief with playfulness and hope and release and rest, that is when we give ourselves the tools to really show up and create something that is so transformative and impactful for our communities and for ourselves. Because like I said, taking on this work is a process of becoming the person who is that champion. You don't have to be that champion right now. You don't. You just have to care right now, and you have to be willing to do this learning. The last lesson that I would like to explore for this is, again, that reminder that you're not doing it all alone. There are so many resources out there. So I want you, again, another reflection here, that you can take the time to pause the video and think about it for yourself and share your thoughts down below if you would like. Have you done the work to understand what's already happening in your community? And in relation specifically to the issue that you care about, to your passion, to what you are championing, have you done the work to learn who else is doing this work? Are they already around you? Or are they someone who can help teach you how to navigate this path as you learn how to bring and champion this issue in your community? There's a few reasons for this. One, knowing what's going on in your community and who's already doing community work is so important, because there are resources that are probably there that you and other people you know just don't even know are there. There are supports. There are people who are really well versed in so many different topics, and they may be an official nonprofit or town organization. They may be just somebody who's really well versed in this wisdom or have been gardening for 70 years. There are so many different resources around us in our communities already. And I know one of the things I focus on when I work with communities is I care about the gaps. I care about what we see as insufficient for our needs or where we need to grow. I do. But I always say, when I'm working with a community, I want to focus on what's strong, not what's wrong. Because we can fix what's wrong. But when we celebrate and focus on what's already there, what's already strong, those are resources, those are partners, those are networks we can leverage. There's wisdom and awareness and practice there that we can access. And B, oh my gosh, is B gonna disappear on me? It may have. It may have just been repeating A. Basically, those networks already exist for you. If that someone is someone who's working on what you care about, your passion issue, they probably need your help. They probably have something for you to do. They probably have tips for how you can step forward and get your foot in the door here. They might even be at the end of their career and are already looking for someone to pass their hat back on to. And if you're that person, they would want to know who you are. The other side of this is, okay, you know your issue. You're really, really doing the work to learn who else talks about this issue. You're building up your capacity for knowledge, and you're realizing there's so many amazing creators and experts and professionals already doing this work. I want to remind you that if they are not doing this work in your community, then you are still needed, and you are still the champion that your community needs. Because I know I have done this too. It is very easy to see other people doing amazing work because they've been doing this for years and feel like, oh, I just can't do it as well as them. Why should I even bother? Or they're already doing it. I'm not needed. You are. Especially if they're in your community, they probably need your help. If they're not in your community, nobody's doing it there. And your community still needs you. This is something I believe through and through. Because it's so easy to convince ourselves to not do the thing. But I also fully believe that we wouldn't have the vision or the care for that thing, for that passion, for that issue, if we didn't have a meaningful impact to make there. So I will encourage you deeply, wholly, and truly to ask yourself those questions so that you can determine next steps. If you haven't done that work, that's your next step. Learn what's going on. Learn who's doing what in your community and learn who else is already an expert. From there, that's when you start reaching out. Admit you're a beginner. Admit your passions. Admit that you have a lot to learn and you want to learn from them. Not everybody will get back to you because people have time limits. People don't always check their emails. Their to-do lists are miles long, some people, right? So I get it. It's hard not to hear back. But some people you will hear back from, and you're going to get an incredible amount of knowledge and guidance from those people doing that work. I think I remember part B to the first part too, is even if somebody, another community organization or champion around you doesn't care about what you're passionate about, but they've been doing work in your community for decades, you still have a lot to learn from them because they know the community. They know the network, and they can open the doorway for you to enter that community network in a way that is humble and true and sustainable. Because all too often we have a tendency to jump in, not knowing what we're doing, and then often that initial jump is going to fail, because often they do. And if we don't have that support network or that awareness after that first initial time, we might give up. But if we have those mentors and guides with us, then we can find the strength to keep going and to keep learning. I will leave this webinar on one final note, and it's that a lot of people are being activated right now. They want to act. They want to know what's going on. They want to know how they can help and make an impact. And this is my reminder to you that if we don't do the work to understand who's already doing the work, especially as it relates to things like anti-racism or immigration rights or, queer support networks in our community, if we're not doing that work, and especially if we're not doing that work, but we're seeing what's happening globally, and we want to make a difference, even though we're coming from a privileged identity, it is quite likely you're going to step on toes, because there are already amazing networks out there that Black and Brown and Indigenous communities have put into place. And oftentimes they could use your support, and they need you to be aware of their history. They need you to be aware of your privilege in this space, and they need you to show up humbly. They might tell you to start your own thing or do your own path, and that's okay. They might give you some really menial grunt work to get started to show you're serious. Because, as I said in the beginning, it's not what you say, it's what you do. And so if you're someone who is coming from a privileged identity like I am, as a white woman, I am incredibly privileged. And if I go into an anti-racist organization thinking I know everything, I am going to be told very quickly that I do not, because I don't. And they probably won't want to keep working with me and inviting me back if I don't show up with humility and a willingness to learn and a willingness to actually listen. So this is for you. If that's something you care about, 100%, we need you to do this work. We need more people in positions of privilege to do this work. But do it humbly. Do it with a learning mindset. Let yourself be curious and let yourself be uncomfortable in certain times. And know this, that discomfort is part of the growth process. It really, really is. We cannot grow and become the person that we're meant to become if we're too scared of being uncomfortable on this journey. All right, I think that's it for this. My name is Danielle Hauk. My business is Vibrant Systems, and my mission is to help people deepen their connections to self, to others, and to the environments that they live in, because it is through these connections that we can increase our capacity to make a meaningful difference and action over time. If you've enjoyed this webinar, please subscribe so that you don't miss the next one. You can also head over to my website, vibrantsystems.ca, see what other events and webinars we have coming up, such as my values workshop that's coming in February. And you can check out the other resources and supports and ways you can work with me through my website as well. Because if you're listening to this and you want support, you want help, you want assistance bringing your passion into your community in a way that is strategic and sustainable, I do that work. I create those plans, I guide those workshops, I help you see that vision, and I help you make that vision a reality. So if you would like my help, I would love to play a role in what you're building. You can reach out to me. Again, my website is best, but I'll put all the information down below too. Thank you for joining me today. Let's make your story a vibrant one.